Merle Hodge's Crick Crack Monkey, The Invention of Self, The Invention of Black Female Modernism in Caribbean Literature. Merle Hodge's Crick Crack Monkey, to me, is a forgotten classic. Published in 1970, Crick Crack Monkey demonstrates Caribbean modernism in its best qualities: invented language, masterful style, and the deconstruction of binary oppositions through ardent symbolism. Hodge's novel, often considered one of the first novels in Caribbean literature by a Black woman, also sets up several key themes persistent in that literary tradition: the coming of age narrative, the rejuvenating ability of nature to heal the soul, and the resistance of hegemonic cultures in favor of Afrocentric ideals. In my presentation, I will offer a reading of this profound novel to show how it creates some of the standards in Caribbean literature. Like a West Indian version of James Joyce's A Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man, Crick Crack Monkey and its main character, T, overcomes the oppressive legacies of colonialism. Through a Bildungsroman, Hodge argues that Trinidadian culture is more powerful than British hegemony. As this slide indicates, Merle Hodge is a very significant contributor to Caribbean literature. She has published fiction, poems, and essays. She has published 3 novels as of 2026, as the slide indicates. Like many Caribbean authors, Hodge spent most of her life as an educator, teaching institutions in Europe, the United States, and throughout the Caribbean. Her essay, Challenges of the Struggle for Sovereignty, Change the World versus Writing Story, in many ways can be considered a treatise for her artistic philosophy. She writes, "Fiction has immense political power. For this reason, she wants to represent her culture and its people in realistic and effective ways." She elaborates on this point. "I began writing in my adult life to protest against my education and the arrogant assumptions upon which it rested, that I and my world were nothing, and that to rescue ourselves from nothingness, we had best see admission to the world of their storybook. Writing about Caribbean lives then provides a re-education that sparks revolutions in the mind, soul, and generations." She proclaims, "Caribbean fiction can help to strengthen our self-image, our resistance to foreign domination, our sense of the oneness of the Caribbean, and our willingness to put our energies into building of the Caribbean nation. This concept is one of the reasons I teach this course. I hope you can see the power in this literature." For those unfamiliar with this book, Crick Crack Monkey tells the story of Cynthia, who goes by the name T, and her interactions with her aunts, Tonti and Beatrice. The book begins with the loss of her mother through childbirth and her father through economic migration to England. Left in the care of her aunts, who split custody and time with T and her brother Tondon, T negotiates her worlds to learn what it means to be a young lady in Trinidad. As the 2013 edition's introduction explains, the 2 worlds of childhood which T inhabits result from the nature of her domestic circumstances. Her father, who has immigrated to England, is the brother of Tonti, who, and her deceased mother, is sister to Aunt Beatrice. T oscillates between these 2 spheres of existence and emerges as a deeply disturbed being, a plight derived from the essential conflict of lifestyles between Creole middle class and Tonti's world. The conflict externalized in these 2 classes of society generates acute feelings of ambivalence within T. Both in form and context, the novel is indeed a response to the inner pressures profoundly felt in complex experience. The vivid exploration of the child's inner world confers on the novel its essential strength. The child's feelings, thoughts, and actions, as she responds to the social and cultural environment in which the novel is set, reflect the authenticity of remembered experience. T's deeply disturbed being emerges by the end of the novel, for she tries to navigate the familial and cultural divisions housed in her family. Hodge makes T's character central to understand Trinidad in its native and colonial cultures. As a strategy to develop T's worldview, Hodge engages in innovation, using style and structure to embody her protagonist's mind. Just as James Joyce puts readers into the mind of the young artist, Hodge puts readers into T's mind. For instance, in the quote above, we see T's perspective about her mother's wake. As a very young girl at the book's beginning, T does not really comprehend what is happening to her. For instance, she is carried to the coffin and appears to view her mother. However, T concentrates on the thick bunches of flowers at her mother's wake. The display of flowers, though, didn't look like flowers at all, but like a bustling covering of some sinister animal sleeping underneath. T cannot comprehend the gravity of her mother's death at this moment. Hodge's use of polysyndon reflects T's mindset because the experience of the wake just overwhelms her. Hodge's innovation verifies her as a Caribbean modernist. Beyond her stylistic innovation, Hodge also builds the novel around short, succinct chapters that create call and response. This exhibit of Hodge's modernism innovates her book's structure through her adherence to call and response, or Crick Crack. As the above slide indicates, Crick Crack describes the Caribbean version of call and response, especially in texts written by writers of African descent. For example, Hodge gives an example of this technique early in the book. T accompanies Mikey, her Aunt Tante's boarder, to visit his friends. The narrator explains, quote, "Often we went down with him to the steel band shed where Santa Clara Cincos practiced, and sometimes he beat a second pan. At the shed there was usually a fringe of children hanging about, and they let us stake the cha-cha. There were some little boys who were regular pan men and who even got to beat a pan on the road at Carnival. With boisterous relish, we supplied the choruses that hugged and danced with the music or darted and threaded airily in and out of it." End quote. T, nor do any of the other children intrude on this throng of friends. Instead, Hodge makes a point to declare that the children can participate in the festivities, mimicking or playing along with this steel band. Hodge then leaves this scene and takes readers and T to the bridge. Quote, "Mikey took us down to the bridge from time to time, always reminding us in no uncertain terms before we set out of what would befall us at his hands if we breathed a word to Tonty, for he wasn't having the setting hen taking a turn in his arse." End quote. T has been included into the life of these men via Mikey. Hodge again makes it clear that T is not transgressing or trespassing upon these men. On the contrary, T learns about language, society, culture, and gender roles in these moments. The narrator continues to explain, quote, "The fellows mainly discussed last weekend's Tarzan picture, or Western, or passed around the latest Danger Man comic book, or they discussed the horses if races were on, or they gave the floor to Manhattan." End quote. Harmless talk at first masked the ever-presence of American culture and hegemony, for which Manhattan's name signifies. Indeed, T's access to this group of men, which is Mikey, works at the American military, who works at the American military base on Trinidad. British hegemony and colonialism are also very important for T's development and education. Before looking into that aspect of the book, let's return to Crick Crack. As the bridge scene continues, Hodge elaborates on Manhattan's role as educator, critic, and trickster among these men. The narrator notes, quote, "Manhattan was an individual who at some obscure date had gone away. Some of the boys said he had only been to Curacao, where he got a job for a few months. One section of opinion had it that he had merely worked down on the base for a few weeks. Manhattan himself gave it out that he had been up stateside, fellers up American side, for he always spoke with his mouth screwed to one side and all words coming out of his nose. When the fellows were in a tolerant mood, they would let Manhattan tell of his encounter with the sheriff in Dodge City, or how he outdrew him, or of the blonde chick in Manhattan who wouldn't leave him alone, kept coming to his apartment when there was this redhead thing he was working at. Martinis, and a little caviar on the side. And when the fellows screamed with laughter, Manhattan looked imbecilely happy, and when one day someone maliciously murmured "Crick Crack" at the end of one of those accounts in perfect Western drawl, Manhattan in his rage forgot to screw his mouth to one side before starting to speak. End quote. Manhattan's twisted mouth, which symbolizes trickster tongue, recounts and replicates the movie plots. His crick here becomes the call, which replicates American culture. Moreover, the fellows give him a long leash to superimpose himself in these plots. Indeed, they may even want to live vicariously through him as he does, especially with several women vying for his attention. This delicate dance of bullshitting, though, ends abruptly when someone responds with Crick Crack, indicating that Manhattan is lying. Their uproarious laughter hints the Crick embarrasses him, and he retorts, Crick Crack your mother. This moment ends with a reinterpretation of Manhattan among the guys. Manhattan was seen less at the bridge after that, and the fellas now thought nothing of addressing him as Freshwater, the name they had formerly used only behind his back. End quote. While this exchange provides many insights of this male group, including gossip rituals, humor, American hegemony, truth, exaggeration, values, Hodge's decision to include T within this group reflects her process of learning. Although she may not grasp all the nuances of this exchange, T learns about men and storytelling. She gains knowledge from observing the others and finding her place among these individuals. Hodge, though, does not make all of these interactions jovial and tight. For instance, T later observes and recounts their catcalling and verbal evaluations of women passing by the bridge. Hodge demonstrates that women have a difficult fate in this society. In another unfunny moment, T watches Mikey defend his honor against Audie Murphy, who denigrates him about his abilities as a man with women. The fight she witnesses reinforces to T a lack of agency for women as these men try to win them without any say. Significantly, Hodge makes T rebel after this moment to show that she is unwilling to be complicit in this mistreatment. Despite Mikey's warning to not tell Tonti about the fight, T does, which gets him in trouble at first. T wants to shelter and protect T and Todden, which Mikey violates with this fight. T learns this by Tonti's reaction. She also sees love and forgiveness in Tonti, who becomes her model for unconditional love and female empowerment. After she gets mad at Mikey for fighting in front of the children, Tonti seems to forgive Mikey. Quote, but Tonti spread some slices of bread, alarmingly thick with butter, heaped some of the smoked herring onto a plate with bread, went to the cabinet and took out a large mug that was the grandpa's, which she filled up with cocoa and bore the lot reverentially into the hostile darkness of Mikey's room. End quote. The food that Tonti serves Mikey here shows their poverty and meekness. The large amount of butter and the smoked fish, along with cocoa, though, provides Mikey substance. Her reverent action teaches T about forgiveness. In the end, Hodge uses the technique of call and response, Crick Crack, to offer a real-life education. Between the scene at the bridge to her return home, T learns about Mikey's vulnerability among other men, Trinidad's treatment of women at times, and Tonti's mothering love. T also sees Tonti as a role model. While her Mikey is real, it is also brief. She still makes and gives him food, knowing that his fight with Audie Murphy had to be done to defend his honor among the audience of men. Hodge's subtle characterization of Tonti demonstrates the best qualities of Trinidadian culture and life. The praise of Trinidadian life and culture is tempered in the novel with the presence of British hegemony and its surrogates of that culture. T's formal education supports British culture at the expense of a Caribbean one. In the slide, Hodge explains how her grammar school teacher, Mr. Hines, instructs the children about the omnipresent British Empire. The quote above explains one of the key lessons. Hodge continues with this quote with a fuller description of the malevolent teacher, forcing these recitations with, quote, many angry interruptions. Mr. Hines stamped and shouted and making us begin all over again and threatened to make us go and stand in the sun and sing even in the depths of adversity. His regime had stood in biting cold and sung songs of patriotism, and the snow had rung with the status of God Save the King, because we were slouching and not standing properly at attention. Not an eyelid must bat, not a finger must twitch, even when we honor the mother country. End quote. His anger at and impatience with these small children show that he is a poor messenger for any authentic patriotism. Indeed, he seemingly delights in punishing these children for any mistake, making him stand in the hot sun as he had to stand in the freezing cold while in the service. Hodge makes this character despicable to warn T and the reader of the danger of hegemonic colonialism. Later in this chapter, Hodge shows Hein's true colors, calling his children racial slurs. This outburst causes T to develop tremendous shame for a racial background, now cast as an inadequacy not just of self but of moral righteousness. Hodge confirms this feeling as T recounts her Sunday school hymn. Quote, till across the wide, wide water, Lord, my black sin washed from, till I come to glory, 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 Lord, and cleansed stand beside thee, white and shining, standing beside thee, Lord, among thy blessed children. In other words, while in the Caribbean, T remains a black child of sin. Crossing the ocean to England or the wide, wide water will make her white and shining. Hodge's metaphor here signals T's shame as a Trinidadian subject under the British colonial system. The hegemony found in the colonial presences of American and British intruders gets embroiled in Aunt Beatrice's character. As we discussed earlier, Tante's role represents decency and love in T's orbit. T's other aunt in the book, Aunt Beatrice, labeled the bitch by Tante, could not be more an opposite and foil to Tante. As the slide above mentions, this book operates around various conflicts or binary oppositions. A strategy like the Crick Crack of the other scene provides a foundation for T's maturation and evolution as a young girl learner. Most significantly, Hodge presents these oppositions through T's vacillation between her two aunts, who she lives between as a young girl. Beatrice's looming presence in the book begins early with her letters, which Tante rages against. This anger colors T's perception of her other aunt. Quote, and so Aunt Beatrice, who was only a blurred, distant lady in our memory, grew horns and a devilous face and 1,000 attributes of female terrifyingness, with the result that we did not scamper off in terror and panic when one peaceful afternoon, as she were sitting in the front step with me playing teacher to a bored and unimpressed class consisting of Tandy, T's brother, and Doolery, a car drew up, and a lady with a benignant smile alighted. She descended upon us and smothered us with kisses and clouds of dull perfume that issued out from her clothes. Beatrice's interest into T's life here introduces some of the key differences between Tante and her. She goes from being a distant lady to the miasma of perfumed kisses. For T, Beatrice's female terrifyingness represents perhaps still apparent here, dissolves some in front of her eyes. Hodge, though, makes Beatrice's character a very difficult one to love, both for the reader and T. She's constantly critiquing T for her nature-loving ways, for her creolized English, and her color. For instance, Beatrice criticizes T for her dark complexion, particularly enhanced by her exposure to the sun and nature. Beatrice constantly tries to erase T's life in the country with Tante. One difficult moment of this erasure is Beatrice's renaming of T. Quote, and Beatrice always called me Cynthia, as if I were in school, and she called Tante Corundra, and T and Tante never knew she meant him. It was your Aunt Beatrice who gave you that name, dear, she said to him, when you were a little tiny baby. As we have mentioned, formal education operates in the book as a form of hegemonic control. Beatrice reinforces this fact. Despite her social airs and outward pleasantness, Beatrice and her criticisms cut deep. T explains, quote, I grew very uneasy whenever Aunt Beatrice spoke harshly to anyone. It made her unwearying kindness to me seem all the more unbearable and precarious. Her smile was now to me like when we used to dare each other to look straight up into the sun. The most violent of Tante's rampages would now have been a comfortable experience somehow compared to Beatrice's smilingness, which made my toes curl with shyness. Sir, lashing out with his tamarind whip, used to inspire me to faint urge to giggle into his face. But Aunt Beatrice I could not cope with. She was a perpetual assault on me. She was a perpetual assault on me before which I recoiled. T would rather have a direct show of anger than Beatrice's passive-aggressive behaviors. One of the most powerful examples of Beatrice's influence is the worshiping of the white ancestress. Elizabeth Helen Carter stands prominently in Beatrice's mind at home. Quote, the large oval photograph, reddish brown with age and encircled in a heavy frame of gilded foliage that hung high up on the wall and leaned over to the attention of all who entered the living room, was that of the white ancestress. Quote, according to Beatrice, she was really the last ancestor worth of mention, for after her things went from bad to worse. Quote. Beatrice's praise of this mythic figure evokes shame into T, who explains that, quote, I began to have the impression that I should be thoroughly ashamed, for it seemed to me that my person must represent the rock bottom of the family's fall from grace, end quote. The divisions between Tonti and Beatrice, native and colonial culture, and indigenous and hegemonic educations leave a tremendous impact on T. As the slide above notes, she is constantly having an identity crisis throughout the book. One of the most heartbreaking moments pertains to an alter ego, or double she creates for herself. This imaginary figure lives the life T wants and needs. In an attempt to close this presentation, I want to return to my original idea. Hodge creates a modernist classic that innovates in language, style, and structure. It also presents binaries to show the various influences T must navigate to grow as a main character. Finally, it presents a narrative about growth and education, one that casts T as its center. While the novel ends rather abruptly, Hodge gives T a possible method to celebrate her Trinidadian culture and identity. Nature provides a place of comfort, release, and safety for T. For example, as a young girl, T recounts the wondering and enjoying nature around Tonti's environment. She tells of a time playing, quote, the rest of the time we were strutting in Mikey's shadow, off to raid the estate or down to the savannah to fly kites that he made for us. Or it was the long, long walk with the sun all around and the singing and blurriness rising from this road and the smell of asphalt and the road soft under your toes and the grass at the side no cooler. And just when it was getting too much, we'd turn off the road and plunge between the bushes and down the precipitous path to the water. And Mikey cruising around in the deep park with one lazy eye on us, and in between the stones, busy little fishes with big heads, and boat races with leaves, and our leaves could never sail straight but sung crazily. From this playful moment in nature, T also traverses her grandmother's land with a keen eye. As the quote above describes, her land provides abundance of the mind, the senses, and the soul. Hodge makes the point that nature may be T's answer to conflicts against her. T's growth in the book shows that she can overcome colonial forces and become her own strong self. In the end, Crick Crack Monkey is a modernist novel of Caribbean literature that needs more attention. Please see these sources for more information.